Hello, and thank you for joining Desk.com's Admin 1. Today's session covers the basics of an admin's plan to configure Desk. During today's session, we'll walk through the following items. First, we'll give a brief overview of Desk.com. Then we'll focus some of our time discussing the process to identify your data model as you're working through Desk.com configurations. On today's demo site, we'll walk through setting up team and the email channel. We'll also build custom fields, dive into macros, we'll enable inbound rules and filters, and we'll also touch on customer satisfaction. So first, what is Desk.com? Desk.com is a configurable service solution that allows you to manage your cases and customer inquiries. The app focuses on common service problems and goals as well, such as cost reduction and productivity improvement. So whether you're looking to capture metrics like average response time, or if you're looking to update cases with more automation, Desk.com case configurations can help you improve your processes, allowing you to help your customers faster. A good place to start with Desk is to understand what happens when a customer emails an inquiry to your team. Let's say a customer named Cody sends me an email about our products or his experience. Desk.com processes that email based on its unique attributes, like who it's from and the to address. Based on these unique attributes, we can configure rules, for example, assigning Cody's email to a specific agent or group, and even sending Cody an auto reply that his case has been received. We can also notify the agent of Cody's case. So for this session and my demonstration site on Desk.com, I am the owner of a neighborhood bike shop called Bay Cycles. And in approaching Bay Cycles from a business standpoint and determining how I want to tackle my Desk.com configuration, I'd like to recommend taking a look at a data model. This is something that I do for every Desk.com configuration, and essentially it's 5 business questions. First, who are your customers? How and why do they contact you? Who's currently handling these inquiries? And what are the problems that you're trying to solve? These key business questions address your processes and challenges today, so we'll use the answers to build your data model for Desk.com. For example, who are my customers at Bay Cycles? I'm answering that through my customer type. I have everyday consumers who are my leisure cyclists, and I also have athletes who are my competitive cyclists. How are they contacting me? This is answered by my channel. Right now, my customers are reaching me via email. They're contacting me for 2 reasons. I have the contact reason for sales, services, events that align with my leisure cyclists. And then conversely, I have the reasons my competitive cyclists reach out, such as new products and order confirmations. And the problems that I'm trying to solve, things along the lines of, are the events I'm running successful? Do my customers care about my events? Can I track my customer type today? Why else would customers be reaching out to me? This is all going to help me plan my inventory, marketing, and partnerships for my customers. And then who's handling these inquiries? Right now, my leisure cyclists are being handled by my staff team, and my competitive cyclists are being managed by my management team. I do recommend investing your time in a data model in order to maximize your configuration for your processes today and the vision you have for the future. Talk to your team to get the full picture and understand what's valuable to them. We'll share lots of examples throughout the build today, based both on my bike shop as well as the customers that I work with. So to show you how I put those answers into action, let's walk through the configurations on today's agenda. To get started, let's start with the admin dashboard. There are 6 tabs at the top that direct you to the configurable areas of Desk. And on the right, we offer a recommended setup guide. If at any time you need help, I do recommend from your menu just clicking the Get Help button. This will direct you to our Desk.com portal or support center, where you can search for articles and videos to help you with topics related to your Desk.com configuration. So let's start first here with the Team tab. The Team tab answers who on your team is handling the inquiries. And I recommend starting by identifying the individuals who will be logging into Desk.com. What are their roles going to be, and how should they be grouped? They might be grouped based on skill set, maybe product knowledge, department or channel, and also escalation complexities. So navigating here to groups, just to give you a highlight here, groups are great because they can have different permissions and functions like case assignment and even dedicated case filters. We'll learn more about the automation shortly. And the groups that we'll use in today's configuration are based on complexity. So first, we already have staff and management built. Let's go ahead and also add an escalation group. And as simple as that, I've added a group and also associated a user to that group. Let's now add a user. Going to click Add User, and we'll add my colleague Brian. Now, for each of your agents, you need to identify their name and email address. You can also determine their public name. So maybe I just want it to show up as Brian. You also need to establish their role. I do recommend checking out the Agent Access Levels article that's listed here in our hover window. This will help you understand and define the variations of roles available to you to select when you're adding a user. I'll go ahead and associate Brian as an agent, and he will be part of my staff group. Now, this agent will receive a welcome email with a link to reset their password. So I'm only going to add one user at this time because Desk.com's welcome email is going to encourage them to log in. And I want to hold off on the rest of my team being notified until Desk is set up and I've tested some important use cases. So now that we know who will be handling our inquiries and we've built out part of our team here, let's toggle over to channels. The contact channels answer the question, how are customers contacting you? And we're going to keep things simple today, and we're going to focus on email. Desk.com provides you with an email address out of the box. You can use this email with your customers or even forward to it from an existing inbox. You just need the email credentials or help from your IT email team. You can add both inbound and outbound mailboxes here on the left-hand side by choosing either inbound or outbound, and then the Add Mailbox button. As far as tips and tricks go, if you are using multiple email addresses for the outbound portion of your cases, we have some great articles in the Support Center that walk you through the steps to associate the outbound mailbox based on agent group or even custom field. And speaking of custom fields, it's time to dive into the configurations that align with three of our questions. Who are my customers? Why are they contacting me? And what problems am I trying to solve? So for case configurations, I'm going to move over to the Cases tab. And we're going to start first with custom fields, which on the left-hand side is under Cases again, and then Custom Fields. And you'll see I've already built one for us to help streamline today's process, but we're going to build two more from scratch. Let's take a look at what I built for us this morning. I'm going to click the pencil button, which is the edit, and it will populate my case custom field information. So I've named this custom field based on how I want it to appear to my agents. The key is used to reference the custom field, especially if you're going to be using our API. The data type, you have a variety of data types to choose from, but the data type here is list. This is my personal favorite because it gives you control and consistency over the information that is input by your agents. For the data list, I've gone ahead and added our options here. Through the plus sign, you can delete options with the cancel X sign. You can also rearrange the order using the drop-down arrows. So let's go ahead, let's dive in and take a look at some of our additional custom fields. Now for customer type, if you remember from mine, I had leisure cyclists and competitive cyclists. Others that I've seen with customers include business customers like vendors versus consumers if you have B2B and B2C, regional customers if you have a domestic territory or a global differentiator, Also, trial versus paying. That's a really great way for you to differentiate your customer types as well. But let's go ahead here and let's add contact reason. And I also want this to be a pick list. So I'm going to go ahead and add my data. This is supposed to differentiate why customers are contacting me. From my demonstration site, we had a variety of options, things like bike sales. We also had bike services. Customers are contacting me for events. They're also reaching out to me based on new products, order confirmations from my shop, and promotions. Now with those added, I'm simply going to click Add, and with that, I've created a custom field with a drop-down list of the available options. Let's do this one more time. I'm going to add my events, and this will also be a drop-down list. Now for my events, I had something called Friday Fun Rides. I had a monthly 20K. I had an annual race, and also the triathlon. Now let's say I added these in a different order, and actually the majority of my inquiries are about Friday Fun Rides. If I list that data point first and I instead choose top data value, this field will automatically default to Friday Fun Rides rather than staying blank until an agent selects an option. And I'll show you what that looks like here in the console. Other examples of custom fields that I run into, if you have products, maybe divisions or product SKUs or inventory batches, that's a really great way to use custom fields. If you have license or service agreements, different tiers, things of that nature, those are also really great ways for you to categorize your products and services. While we're here, I also envisioned that my data model would have some dependencies, essentially that the fields would be dependent on whether or not it was a consumer or a vendor customer. If you remember from my model, I had built the leisure cyclists at the top, and I had built the competitive cyclists at the bottom. And each contact reason and each event type was based on whoever the customer was. So let's toggle over here to dependencies so that we can link our custom fields together and create those dependency lists. I'm going to click Add Dependency and pause here for a moment to define what the controlling and dependent fields are. The controlling field is that primary choice that affects the follow-up choices. So in this example, I'm going to use my customer type as my controlling field. Then I need to decide what options the customer type should control. That's the dependent field. I'm going to build this out for both contact reasons and event types. Now what I love about this pop-up is that it's pretty quick and easy. It's clicks, not code. So for the contact reasons, under my leisure cyclists, they reach out to me for bike sales, they reach out to me for bike services, and they reach out to me for events. Now let's say I accidentally click new products. I can easily remove this by clicking the no circle. Now my competitive cyclists reach out to me for new products, order confirmations, and promotions. Click Save. And my dependency is built. Let's make sure we enable it, and let's add the second dependency. So again, we're starting with the controlling field as the customer type, because depending on who the customer is, I want different options in my event dropdown to populate. So my leisure cyclists were most interested in Friday Fun Rides and the monthly 20K, and my competitive cyclists were most interested in my annual races and triathlons. Click Save and enable this field. So now I'm going to navigate to the Agents console to check out these changes. And clicking into a case, over on the right-hand side, we have our case details. You can see that the order of the case detail fields are organized by standard fields at the top. So these are the fields that come native to Desk.com. And then custom fields are below here. Let's take a look at the dependencies that I created. You're only going to see one of those custom fields right now. You don't see contact reason or events because we haven't yet selected a customer type. If I go ahead and select leisure cyclist, now I have the option to fill in my contact reason, limited to 3 reasons that I said were dependent on leisure cyclists. And I can also choose my events. And you saw that it defaulted here. It showed Friday fun rides rather than a blank screen. But I can manually change this as an agent. Now, conversely, if I change this to competitive cyclists, you'll see here that I have the 3 options, my new products, order confirmations, and promotions, available for my contact reasons. And events as well. Now, having standard fields at the top and custom fields at the bottom works well for a lot of our customers. But this may not correlate to the priority or importance for that field as it relates to my business and my agent workflow. But that's okay because it's an easy fix using next-gen case layouts. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate back over to our admin panel. I'm still in the Cases tab and I'm still under the Cases menu. I'm going to click on Next-Gen Case Layouts. Now, case layouts are great, especially if you want to customize the view for your agent, but they're even better if you have different layouts of the case details for one group versus another. So for example, maybe management is ordered one way and staff is ordered another. Right now we're on the default, so I'm going to go ahead and click Add Case Layout. And we need to give this a name. And for my own sanity here in the demonstration, I'm just going to call this today's layout, but I recommend naming this based on either dating it so you understand version control or which group or users this is going to be most applicable to. And then here in the center white area, this is where you're going to determine the layout. And your toolbox, what you can choose from, is here on the right-hand side. At the present, all of your standard fields are ready to rock and roll within Desk.com. And you can choose whether or not you want to retain those or reorder them, as well as where you want to add your custom fields. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Customer type is pretty important to me, so I want to go ahead and include that at the top. Events are important to me, but not as important as understanding who my agent or groups are that this is assigned to. So I can go ahead and reorder the information here. Don't forget too, you do need to associate this layout to users before saving. That way, when this user logs in, they'll see this new layout that you created. I'll click Add. It is enabled. So let's navigate back over to the Agents console. I'll need to hit refresh, but before I do, this is the old layout. And as we refresh, what we'll see on the right-hand side will change. You can see now that case details better reflects my intention from how I designed it in the case layout. I have my status and priority at the top. Then I have my customer type custom field. So again, I can select leisure cyclist, contact reason now populates, and I have the ability here to modify who the agents are that are assigned to this case. You know, for example, maybe I begin working the case, maybe I'm going on PTO for the rest of the week, so I want to assign this case to my agent and colleague, Brian. Also, if a case comes in and agents are required to move the groups or adjust any of these case custom fields, simply coming in to edit the case, you have full flexibility to do so. So back on custom fields, I like to just take a moment too and talk a little bit about some of the options with custom fields. We talked a lot about case custom fields shown here on the screen, but you can also build custom fields for your customers and their companies. So if in the future I want to add custom fields to either that company or customer object, I would work through a very similar process. Examples of customer or company level fields would include things like unique company IDs that you might use for billing purposes, maybe an employee size at the company, or even the customer's time zones. Simply navigate to either customer or company, The custom fields menu populates for you, and you would simply click Add Custom Field. So now with the agents in the system, case fields added, and the email address enabled, it's time to organize who should handle the new cases with rules. So diving into the rules section here, on the left-hand side, I'm still in the Cases tab. I've gone ahead and selected Rules. Desk.com automation via rules allow you to define if this, then that statements. For example, if an email comes in to a specific email address, then route the case to our staff group. Or if a new inquiry is submitted, then send an auto reply to the customer, their case has been received. So let's start with something easy. Right now we have 2 out-of-the-box rules. For you walking into a new Desk.com instance, these will be disabled. The first is sending an auto acknowledgement. Essentially, when a customer emails us, we want to make sure that they get an instant reply that lets them know we've received their inquiry. The reply theme, or how the email appears to the customer, can be customized to include case information as well, like the customer name or even the case ID value. This is done through the reply themes that are listed under the email channel settings. Now, because this rule is already created for us, all we have to do is turn it on. But let's give you a quick view of what rules look like, and we'll walk through one from scratch. I mentioned adjusting the reply theme, so right now it's just using the system default. If you have multiple versions, this would be a drop-down list from which you can choose. You can also determine if you want to run your rule anytime, during business hours that you set up in settings, or during non-business hours. Let's go ahead and enable this and click Update. While we're here, let's also enable the interaction notification. So for new cases, this is created for us. We simply need to turn it on. And this means that notifications are going to send an email to let agents know that a new case was assigned to them. This is helpful for someone in my role because I'm not 100% dedicated to support. In fact, I spend about half my day in Desk.com and the other half split between customers and internal projects, maybe running webinars. But what about new rules? So if you have a new rule that you want to add for inbound interactions when cases come into Desk.com, simply click Add Rule. For my bike shop, when a new email is received, we want to decide what happens to that inquiry. Desk can help auto-assign that using these inbound rules. So I'm going to build 2 from scratch. The first is for my leisure cyclists inbound. And I'm going to select that my interaction type is via email. I'll click Add. And this is what a rule looks like when you start from scratch. You first have to define your conditions. These are the if statements. If this condition is met, then I want my rule action to apply. There are 2 types of conditions. You have an all condition and an any condition. All conditions use and as an operator. So if you have multiple conditions listed under all of those conditions must apply. It's an and statement. The any condition are criteria with an or operator, meaning I might list 3 conditions here, and it might be 1, or it might be 2, or it might be 3. So let's start here with leisure cyclist inbound. If a customer emails our support team via the cyclist account, then I want our staff group in Desk.com to see and manage the case. So we're going to select from my condition the email, and the email to is going to a specific alias, and this one is called cyclist. And the rule action is the then statement. So I mentioned if a customer emails our support team via this account, then I want our staff group to see these. So my action is going to be to assign my case assigned group. And I'm going to pick staff. And as simple as that, I've built my leisure inbound. I'm going to enable and click Update. Now, if you have a variety of rules that follow a similar cadence, I want to point out that you can duplicate or copy your rules using the Copy button here. It's next to the Edit pencil, and then here's the Delete or Trash can. Let's click Copy, and I can go ahead and edit this, and I'm going to call this one my competitive cyclists. Now the email too is going to contain a different alias. This is actually our athletes' email account. So when the email comes to athletes@basecycles.com, I actually want to assign this to our management group and click enable. If you're curious about additional rules, these are covered in our advanced webinar session. That's called Admin 2. Definitely use that session to talk about time rules, as well as any questions that you might have about some of these other features. We do define all of these rule types on our support center if you're curious about when to use one over another. So in speaking about automation, I do want to take a moment and talk through Desk.com macros. And macros is a word that you may have heard of previously, or it may be new to you. But to speed things up for your agents, macros allow you to pre-populate responses like canned text, as well as fill in some of your custom fields on frequently or rarely asked questions. The pre-written responses that include those +1 actions are what we call macros. And macros are going to live and breathe with your support team. Most customers revisit and add to macros regularly. So when I initially spoke with my bike shop staff, they mentioned that customers often ask about our events. So I'd like to make their jobs a bit easier and create a macro where they can save time typing to customers asking about our events, and also fill in some of the standard and custom fields. I'm also going to include a designated reply for the customer. That way we can tackle multiple actions with one macro. Now I've gone ahead and gotten this started for us here today, but we still do need to fill in some of the customizations. So I'm going to click edit here on this macro that I started. And we're going to walk through the options that you have available to you. So first, you do need to name your macro. I recommend naming this something easy for agents to remember. I'm going to show you why here shortly from the agent's point of view, but it allows the agents to recall and use the macro much faster. You can also set the description. This is one of those standard fields that comes with Desk.com. So perhaps there is something from a description point of view that you do want to automatically set with this macro and save your agent time. It's also a great opportunity for you to outline anything or include a step-by-step process or template for the agent to follow. The set description is just for the agent. This doesn't show up to the actual customer. You can also set labels within Desk.com. You can also append labels. I've gone ahead and built that out for us. I'll start first with setting labels. Setting a label essentially resets the labels that are appended to the case at present and resets it and only sets it to the label that you determine here. Versus appending a label does just that. It appends or adds it to the line of any labels that may currently be already existing on that case. You can also assign a group or an agent. So I went ahead here and assigned the user to the current user. I could also assign this to a different agent listed in my system, like Brian or myself. And you can also add your quick reply. So here I've gone ahead and typed this out for us, but when the agent uses a quick reply, it'll say hello. It will dynamically pull in the customer name, and it will include the context and text that we'd like the customer to see. Now, when the agent uses a macro, they can manually modify this. So if you want to leave something blank, you can do so, and the agent can fill it in. But this is a really great way for you to, especially those frequently asked questions, for you to kind of one and done provide that quick reply text. There are a variety of other features available to macros. One that I do want to point out is the permissioning. If you have things that are sensitive to your processes, billings, refunds, cancellations, things of that matter that do need to be isolated to a specific group or maybe to just a single user, you can permission macros as such. But for this example, I want all of my users to be able to use it. We'll go ahead and click enable. Now, before I leave this screen, I do want to point out this. Macros bring up a great point on expediting case handle times, and Desk.com does have a variety of shortcut coding that will help you dynamically pull information into cases. In this macro, I've included the customer's first name. This call starts with 2 curly Q brackets and ends with 2 curly Q brackets. This is Desk.com's templating language, which we call liquid variables. And we do have an extensive list of these on our support center if you simply search for liquid variables. I think I have customer first name and case ID memorized. The rest I go ahead and just reference from that list. And so now that I have some of the features available to building a macro set up here, let's go ahead. I'm going to add a note just so that you can see it too. I'm going to go ahead and click Update, triple check it's turned on, and I'm going to head back over to my agent point of view. I'm going to refresh. That way the macro reloads, can cache it back in. And I'm going to show you how the agents can use a macro. So let's say that I want to reply to Brian here. He needs a bike. And if I had a bike macro set up, it would be great to use that. But let's theoretically think that Brian asked about events here. And I can simply go to my Use Macro menu and select Bike Event June. That's the macro we just built. For a shortcut, one of the reasons I said name your macros ways that agents can figure it out, a keyboard shortcut is # and then start to type the name of the macro. You see that it popped up here for me to choose from. I clicked on it, and you can see a couple of things happened. I told the macro to override the subject line. The macro dynamically pulled in the customer's information, included the quick reply text, and updated the case detail statuses here on the right-hand side. Now, one of the things that I didn't have the macro do that I could have had the macro fill in all of my custom fields. So I do recommend trying that out when you're building your macros. That's a great point of view for you to kind of QA and test, is to test the macros on your own. And I could send update and resolve here. So now that case has been successfully answered using a macro, and all of the information appended to that macro went through. While we're talking about expediting things and we're organizing things for our agents so that Desk.com is easy for them to use, I'd like to take a moment and navigate over to what we call our filters. When I was in Desk as an agent, you saw on the left-hand side here that I have a variety of filters, or maybe queues or folders are an easy way for you to remember this. Filters are also configured under the Cases tab, and on the left by clicking Filters. Filters help you streamline your business processes as well as your agent's day-to-day. And there are a variety of helpful filters that come out of the box. For example, Inbox, which includes all unresolved cases that are new, open, or pending. You have All Cases, so regardless of the state or status. And then My Cases is a really great way for your agents to take a look at all of the unresolved cases that are assigned to them. Other filter examples may include departments, maybe procurement or billing or operations. Some companies organize and create filters by skill set or tier. So they have a tier 1 filter, tier 2, and escalated. And many organizations layer their filters based on groups, specialties, and products. For my business process, I want to segment leisure cyclist cases from our competitive cyclist cases. And if you remember, we already built a rule that says when leisure cyclists write in, we're going to auto-assign that to our staff group. And when competitive cyclists write in, we're going to auto-assign that to our management group. Thus, I'm going to create a filter for each. I'm going to click Add Filter. We'll start with leisure. You can add an optional description. And similar to the rules, you have conditions that need to be met for cases to associate to this filter. So as I mentioned, we already have our assigned groups established via rules. So for leisure, this would be our staff group. This is available to all users. We'll enable it. Click Update. And for our competitive, be consistent, click Add. The condition here is that the group is our management. And you'll see for these dropdowns, there are a variety of options that you can choose from. If you've noticed while I'm creating rules and while I'm creating filters, I like to type ahead. It helps me find the options a lot faster. So for competitive, the assigned group here is management. And in this example, we're going to leverage the permission capability. So within filters, we can determine if you want all users, a specific group, or an individual to see the filter, much like we just walked through with macros. In this particular example, I only want our management team to see the cases assigned to management and to see the emails from our competitive athletic cyclists. I'll click Enable and Update. And before we wrap up filters, I do want to emphasize one thing. Filters surface cases dynamically. It's based on the criteria or conditions that we just set. So I don't want you to necessarily think of these as static folders. Rather, filters contain queues of cases. The filters organize where and how the agents can see those cases. With our filters and rules set up, with our macro built, and with our custom fields in place, there's one more feature that I want to highlight in the Cases tab before we discuss resources. And that's down here. It's called Customer Satisfaction. And you might be thinking, what is Customer CSAT? What is this feature in Desk.com? And essentially, it's the rating feature from Desk for those on our Pro Plan or higher. And it allows your customers to rate their support experience with your team. So when you're ready, you can simply toggle on Customer Satisfaction. This enables it within your organization. And you can determine what your feedback question is. This is going to appear above the customer's rating options. You can customize this, but out of the box, we ask, how satisfied were you with the resolution we provided today? You can choose a frequency as well. Do you want your customer satisfaction to go out with every resolution or just with the first resolution? From a best practice standpoint, we recommend every resolution to allow multiple notifications to customers to provide you feedback. The feedback type is pretty standard. You have a 2 or a 4 smiley rating system. And then you have the option to ask an additional feedback question, whether you want this to align to your product or maybe your team's core values. We've provided a sample out of the box. How might we make your experience even better in the future? And then lastly, if you are taking advantage of your knowledge-based support center within Desk.com, so you have a self-serve landing page for your customer, feel free to use your portal, that support center, for your CSAT as well. Essentially, toggling this on determines whether or not this additional question is served on a web page that matches the web theme of your support center or a generic web page. I don't have my support center enabled right now, so I'm going to keep this toggled off. This means that my additional feedback question will show up on a generic web page. Within our support center, we do outline recommended rules and filters that you can use to organize cases that receive either positive or negative feedback. We also have a recording of a recent CSAT webinar to help walk through some of those recommendations. There's also an article that walks you through the steps to change the smiley faces to another image that you may prefer, maybe something more branded, so long as you have those images hosted online. So as we wrap up here today, we'll take a minute and we'll review some of the topics that we covered. First and foremost, we started by adding our team members and groups to Desk. We enabled and talked about the inbound and outbound email channel options. We used our data model to create case custom fields. I also talked about company or customer custom fields, if that's something you're interested in. We enabled internal notifications and auto acknowledgements so that our agents and customers are aware when new case interactions come through Desk.com. We created a macro for our events, as well as inbound rules to help us categorize and assign cases. We added new filters so that we could display the cases to the appropriate agents. And we enabled CSAT to collect customer satisfaction. So I'd love to dive into some of the resources. As you get started as an admin, you are going to have questions. So I do recommend starting with our support center, support.desk.com. This is our landing page where you are able to search for articles, help, and advice so that you can get the most out of Desk.com. We also have a video console here. The video support center is accessible via this blue tab. A variety of our articles also include videos native into the context of that article. So I welcome you to check that out. For example, I recently mentioned our CSAT. We do have the article here on our homepage right now, measuring customer satisfaction. These change regularly, so do check back. And also, if you have any questions and you want to reach out to our support team, you can email our support team here through our website or at support@desk.com. You can also call our support team. You can also ask our community. If you're familiar with Salesforce, you understand that Salesforce and the products within have their communities where experts who work for Desk and experts who use Desk and other customers like yourselves come together and talk with one another. They use it for ideas, troubleshooting, etc. And I also want to point out check system status. I went ahead and pulled this up here. Our Desk.com status site is our trust site. This helps you see all of our system operations in real time. So you can see here that this was refreshed less than 1 minute ago, and all systems are operational. We also report on past incidents as well as scheduled maintenance. I do recommend subscribing to updates by clicking this blue button. And if you are within the Salesforce family, or if you are a self-starter as far as learning goes, I do want to recommend Trailhead to you. Trailhead covers a variety of modules and topics related to the Salesforce ecosystem, whether you're an admin, an end business user, or a developer. Specifically for Desk.com, we have a variety of trails that can help you become more acquainted with specific topics. For example, maybe you're interested in the basics, or you want to dive deeper into some of the organization topics that we covered in today's webinar. There are a variety of trails available for you here to beef up your knowledge of Desk.com. And lastly, as I mentioned, if you have any questions about Desk, or if you're working through configurations, please do reach out to our support team. I've added their email address to the slide here available for you. And with that, I'd love to say thank you. Thank you for showing up to today's session. We really appreciate your business, and please do let us know if you have any questions. Best of luck. I want to make sure you're as successful as possible with Desk.com.